everybody. Welcome to the Snow West Show. I'm Ryan Harris. Real quick, before we get into this episode, the Snow West Show is made possible thanks to Polaris Snowmobiles. And listen up, for December only, 5 lucky winners who purchase a sled this month will receive an automatic entry for a chance to get full reimbursement for the price of their sled. That's 5 people. You go buy a snowmobile in the month of December from Polaris, you're automatically entered to get full reimbursement for the price of your snowmobile. So go see your local Polaris dealer to check that out. Also, save up to $3,000 on select models. For the best season savings, go see your local Polaris dealer or find your closest dealer at Polaris.com. Also located in Big Sky, Montana, only 5 minutes away from Buck Ridge and Carrot Basin, 320 Guest Ranch offers lodging and accommodations for your next snowmobiling trip. Single cabins and large full cabins with kitchens are available. Check it out at 320ranch.com. Also sponsoring the show this year, Fly Racing is the #1 gear and brand in supercross and motocross, and they bring that same product innovation to snowmobiling. Whether it's monosuits, helmets, boots, gloves, or goggles, Fly Racing has you covered head to toe. Check them out at flyracing.com or Fly Racing Snow on socials. And thanks to Deviant Ink for supporting the show. Head over to deviantinc.com and check out their custom wrap builder with their new interactive tool designs that make designing and customizing wraps really easy. Their new colorizer tool, it randomizes color combinations until you land on the look that you love. Then try the design mixer tool to see all the Deviant Ink designs in the colors that you've selected. Check it out at deviantinc.com. Thanks for listening, and now back to the show. Hey everybody, welcome to the Snow West Show. We're here at the Idaho Snowmobile Show, and I've got a guy on here that I've wanted to get on the podcast for a long time, Jack Struthers, Carl's Cycle Sales.
Good deal.
And then Caleb Frankamp. So Caleb, you're working with Jack. You were with Seat Concepts for quite a while, but you've been with Carl's Cycle for, what, over a year now?
Coming up on 3 years.
Oh, 3 years, okay.
Been in the power sports industry for over 15.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
So with Carl's longer than I was remembering.
Yeah.
That's cool. And Jack, so you run Carl's Cycle Sales, which for anybody who doesn't know about Carl's Cycle Sales, they should, but if there's a couple people out there that don't, you're a Polaris dealership based in Boise, Idaho, but you have been involved in the performance side of things, aftermarket. Your dealership is really known for giving the customer a product that is ready to go better than just what's coming out of the crate. Like it's ready for your terrain. You do some custom clutching and setup. Like you really dial these things in.
Yeah. So my dad started Carl Cycles in '66, and then he was into racing motorcycles and snowmobiles and stuff like that, and used to race at West Yellowstone and used to race desert on motorcycles and motocross and stuff like that. So the business was kind of founded on that, and then obviously as I grew up I started working there, and I've always been into it. And then I've always been into performance, and we've always done stuff at Carl's, and started with my dad, and then he passed away in '96, and then I've been running it since then.
So I want to start out by just doing some history stuff here, because when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, we did the Snow West Snowcross in West Yellowstone. And you were racing snowcross, you were racing Kirk Hibbert, Brad Pake, and all those guys. And all my buddies were like Hibbert fans, and I was this Jack Struthers fan. Like when I started really getting involved, it was probably right after you won the I-500.
Okay.
So early 90s.
Yep.
We were just talking over there at your booth. You won the I-500 in 91, correct?
91, 92, and 94.
Man. So talk about that a little bit. How did you get into the cross-country racing and the snowcross aspect? Is that part of just the dealership, or did you want to be a racer?
Well, back then, they had the Rocky Mountain cross-country circuit, and Rocky Mountain cross-country also had snowcross at the time. And basically in the, mid to early 80s, I decided I wanted to race snowcross at McCall and race at Round Valley and stuff. And then we got into the Rocky Mountain cross-country racing 2-man and 3-man teams. And we always raced Rocky Mountain cross-country with different people, Doug Lasher, Tim Shellhorn, and we were racing team races. And anyway, it was doing good at that or whatever and having fun. And Hibberts used to race that. And then, Kirk went back and did good at the I-500. And I'm like, well, we need to go do that. So I went and raced the I-500. And at that time, the I-500 was a big cross-country race. There'd be 300 riders and stuff, and it was a big deal in that time. Cross-country was bigger then than I think it is now, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that segment of racing has changed quite a bit. Like RMX CRC's gone away.
It's gone,
obviously.
Yep. And that was a great circuit, but I land and snow, and just I think it's harder to put stuff on in the forest now than it used to be, and things like that. And that was fun racing for sure. And it was just terrain racing and cross country, and it was good. It was a great circuit.
It seemed like it was easier to get involved in racing back then too, because the sleds you were riding on the weekend were closer to what you were racing on.
That is absolutely true. You'd take a snowmobile out of the crate and basically put some studs in it and go race it, and that's what they raced. And then it got into these whole 500 build and then down to now it's 70 build race sleds. And like when we raced snowcross, you could literally take a sled off the showroom, set it up, and go race it. And now if you don't have one of the 70 build limited race sleds, you have no chance. And it's definitely changed that way, and I think it's made the sport smaller, where we would race our sleds one on the weekend, and then the next 2 weekends we go play ride with family and friends.
On the same sled.
On the same sled.
Yeah. And the cross country thing was cool, because you would pull up to some of these RMX CRC races, the St. Anthony 101.
Yep.
And you'd have guys on their I guess back then they were Snow King specials, SKS sleds,
Yep.
just whatever they were riding at the time.
Exactly.
And it was easy to get into that. But RMX CRC turned into Mountain West Racing, and then that's kind of just gone away. There's a couple small circuits, but Western Snowcross is just all but gone.
Yep, it is.
And it's sad to see that, unfortunately. But yeah, you were pretty dominant back in the day. You, like you said, you did the I-500. You won that 3 times. How many Snowcross titles did you wrap up there?
Oh, I'm not sure. I won a lot in the Rocky Mountain stuff, and then won some back in the Midwest in the MRP circuit, because I went back and did that a couple years, and the ISOC circuit. I don't know. I'd have to sit back and count, but did fairly well for sure.
So you were the original number 8 on a Polaris, like Levi LaValle kind of took that over.
Yep.
Later on, so you look back at some of the wedge chassis stuff that he races, and it has an 8 on it, and I always get confused. I'm like, that's Jack. No, that looks like Jack, old white XCR or red XCR. So how did your racing background help you with the development side at Carl's Cycle when you started developing your own products or tuning your sleds?
Well, part of it obviously is we always did shocks. Like in '84, I decided I wanted to have shocks on my snowmobile, so I got Fox Shox and put them on my snowmobile, and did that because we could valve them and make them work. And at that time, I played with dirt bike stuff and with shocks and forks and things like that, and I wanted better shocks for my snowmobile. So we basically got Fox Racing has road bike shocks that they use for road racing, and we got shocks from them for that, and just made them work on a snowmobile, made them fit, and started working on valving for that. And then that turned into selling snowmobile shocks to everyone, like Kirk Hibbert and all those guys got shocks from us, and we did shocks for Bender and Hools and everyone that was racing Polaris and ovals, and everyone that was racing like Yamaha. We did all Bender stuff back in the day, and we would do Fox Shox for all those people, and we were like the Fox Shox source, and that all went along until Arctic Cat decided to put them on their original sled, and then they kind of went direct with Fox, and then Fox went direct with Polaris the next year, and then we did all that stuff for Polaris. Like we were the team behind coming up with the valving and the springs and what we wanted on the race sled. And at that time I was racing, so it was important for me to have a good production race sled with good shocks on it.
So like Caleb, we were talking about a little earlier, that Fox Shox might not be around and as a company globally if it weren't for Jack and what he was doing back in the 90s, bringing these sleds.
Correct.
Bringing the shocks out on sleds and all the development.
During that area, they were definitely financially struggling, and I think that there's a lot to say for the fact that with Jack getting on those shocks and his mentality and his pedigree, really changed the game and really wanted people to ride Fox Shox and to give them a try moving forward. And I know that was a big turning point for them to stay alive and become the company that they are today.
Yeah, and there's a deal with Bob Fox where he's interviewed and talking about that, and how in the winter they would be slow and they were looking for something. And then I think them getting into Arctic Cat and Polaris let him go into the OEM side of it. And now obviously with Ford and mountain bike stuff, OEM's huge, and that's where they make all their money. But I think the door to that was getting in with Polaris and Arctic Cat and making, hey, this OEM deal is a good thing. We can sell a lot of shocks.
Yeah, and I think aftermarket, though, Snowmobile is still huge. Like It kind of shrunk down there for a while with their aluminum supply problems the last 3 or 4 years. But the snowmobile side of aftermarket is bigger than like the mountain bike segment, which you think would be enormous too, and all that. But if that company weren't around, and you said you were working with Bob back at that time?
Yeah, Bob owned Fox at that time, and I mean, we had people there we would work with, like Mike Dawes and stuff, or the engineering team and stuff like that. Jeff Hibbert was there, and we would work with them. And then later on, Rick Strobel wasn't even there then, and it was like a long time before he came along and got in there. But we would work with Mike Dawes, and then if we had technical stuff, we would actually work with Bob Fox. Like, we'd talk to him, and he ran the company back then, and it was his small company at that point.
That's an interesting story in itself, the whole Fox story, because the Fox motocross gear company and the Fox Shox company are tied together. Bob and Jeff. So Jeff took over went and split off and did the clothing brand of Fox. Bob did the suspension brand. Jeff's son Pete now runs Fox on the moto side, correct?
Yep.
But yeah, that's just cool. Were you rebuilding and revalving and coming up with your own valve stacks and everything back then?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Were there any other people doing stuff that in depth back in the late 80s, early 90s?
I think at that time we were the start of it. We used to do the valving for pretty much everyone in the early to mid 90s. We were the people that did the valving for people that were racing. Whether it was on the Yamaha side with Tim Bender, or if it was like Guy Useldinger, or the Hools, or whoever was racing on Polaris at the time. We did a lot of the valving for those. I mean, I probably still have notebooks with valving of what they were running when we were doing that for them.
Yeah, that's incredible. So this continues to evolve, though, for you into more of a relationship with Polaris R&D department. You were kind of involved with the RMK. When did you get involved with? I know the '97 RMK, when that came out, you were heavily involved with that project, right?
Yeah. So I was racing snowmobiles and cross country and whatever, and so I got in with Polaris while working on the Fox Shox for the 440s, and then from there, I was racing snowcross and stuff, and we wanted, in the 94, 95 season, we were getting beat by Tony Heikkinen on his 670, and we wanted a 2-cylinder big motor. Well, Polaris was coming out of the watercraft, and so engineering staff like, Darren Headland and people at Polaris, Chuck Baxter and stuff, was willing to help us out and say, hey, we're going to use this watercraft motor. It's a 700. We could probably make that work. And obviously they didn't want me running a Rotax motor in my snowcross sled. So we basically went to work, and I built the sled and the chassis, and Darren and the team at Polaris built up a watercraft 700cc twin-cylinder motor to race. And the very first one that was made, they brought out to our shop. We put it in my sled. We went up to my parents' cabin, checked out the sled, had a little water pump problem, fixed that. We came back to the shop, fixed that, went over to West Yellowstone and raced it at the 95 Expo. And then basically we only had a day or two to get it ready, and we won with it that weekend. And that was the first twin-cylinder 700 Polaris engine that was ever ran or anything, which is different than today. Like, they don't make a motor and go race with it the first weekend. Now it's development for years and years and years before you ever see it go racing. And we raced with it, and then the next year, at that time, I was working with Polaris on, the snowcross cross-country sled stuff, and then that evolved into, hey, let's work on the 700 RMK, and, we worked with them on, rolling the chain case and the 136 track instead of the 133, and all those changes that went on the 700 to go along with the new 700 twin motor, and the fact that we wanted a lighter twin, that all went together, and we worked on that sled all through 96, and then it came out for the 97 season.
How much did that engine change versus what you raced in your Pro Open Mod in 95 versus the production 700 twin? What did they just use the watercraft platform?
They used the basic watercraft platform. Obviously, there was differences, like the crank had to be different. It doesn't have a screw-on coupler and all that stuff. And so basically that part of it was different, but the middle part of the crank was all pretty much the same. And the cylinders, they were different because they didn't have all the water coming in, so they had to run different water pump and stuff like that. So there was differences, but the basic concept was there. They were the Snowmobile was a nickel seal motor, where the other ones were cast liner and stuff. But it was basically that was their Liberty, the start of their Liberty motor, where they were making their own motors, and yeah, they made the watercraft and the Snowmobile kind of about the same time, because the watercraft I think came out in '95, I think.
Yeah, the SL, yeah, and then the 650 comes out, or the 600 comes out in '98, following year, as a twin. Were you involved in that?
It was off the same platform as the 700. It was just a D-board 700 because they thought they needed something for the 600 class because that was big at the time.
Mm. Yeah, back then it was going. It kind of started out at
440 and 580 and
5,
600 and 550, 580 and yeah.
And then it'd get back up to 6, 7, maybe an 800, and then drop back down to a 600.
And the 670 was super popular, and so the 700 came out to compete with the 670.
Mm-hmm. So the 700 RMK comes out. That kind of revolutionized the mountain riding, especially Polaris's involvement in it. What's the next big platform or development that you're involved with in that? The Dragon 700, or what?
Yeah, we worked with the Dragon 700 and the 800. They were based off the 440 snowcross motor and stuff, and then just the whole chassis and going lighter. And Polaris made some mistakes with the 95, and then they went back to the lighter chassis for the Dragon. And Marty Sampson was super involved with that and wanted to make them lighter. And we would, at that time we would test a lot with Polaris and go work with them and stuff. And they had a great team for sure.
Because Marty was involved with that, and Marty's your kind of guy, probably. I mean, he starts out as a Polaris test rider,
yep,
and then becomes the engineering team leader for Mountain. But he was involved in the Edge RMK, the Vertical Escape in 2003. Like that was kind of his baby.
Yeah, and he started working for him in like '95, probably something like that. And he started off as calibrating the 500 and stuff, and then got into doing more development work for him and more chassis work. And I mean, he could ride, and he liked to ride, and he knew that we needed lightweight and easy to ride and easy to side hill. And I think he was always working on trying to make things lighter and easier to side hill and easier to ride. And he knew what it was like to ride. Like, he could really ride.
Yeah, that's why the long-term evolving of Polaris from the Edge to the IQ to the Pro Ride, I think a lot of that came from Marty rode like you rode.
Yeah.
Like Marty would drop off into ravines and just go explore and get stuck. And he knew that, man, these things got to be lighter. It's got to do this. It's got to get on the snow better.
Yep.
Like what the product.
And Marty was also really good at having dealers that he talked to. He had a lot of dealers out west that were into riding snowmobiles. Whether it was Max at Tri-City or Gary at Bucky's or me or Kurt at Kurt's Polaris and John over at Pierre's and stuff like that, and people in the Midwest and East, I'm sure Marty talked to too. But Marty was not afraid to pick up the phone and ask questions like, hey, what are your customers doing? Oh, they're all cutting the tunnel shorter? Okay. And, he would go look at that and test it. And yeah, you're right. It does work better with the short tunnel or the rails being shorter or, whatever. I mean, he was always knowing, what are the aftermarket doing? What are you guys looking for, and why are you doing it? And then he would test it and see if it works. And if it works, I mean, he was not afraid to try to make it into production.
The jump from IQ to Pro Ride was a pretty significant step forward in mountain riding.
Yeah, for sure.
And yet, you're right. Marty had a network of people that he would lean on, Western-based people, dealers.
And, set up legitimate meetings with them. Like, hey, we're going to have a Western coalition, and we're going to meet at such and such, and try to get 6-8 dealers to show up and talk to him, and maybe we'd go ride something new, and he would get feedback. And
so did a lot of this design of, like, I'm just trying to figure out what was the catalyst for getting off of the seat, making everything smaller, standing up, getting the bars up higher, going from IQ to Pro Ride. Where that, we went away from this handlebar cluster of big plastic wrap over the handlebars and big gauge handle on the controls. Went from that to just give me a simple control that's lightweight.
I think Marty's focus was lightweight, period, and he knew that weight was important, and he knew whatever we could do to save weight would help, and he got it. He would ride with people, and he was aware that you need to be lighter to work better.
Yeah. So let's jump forward quite a bit to just a few years ago when Polaris releases the 9R. That when they introduced that to the media, and Marty was still involved. He's since retired, but when Marty was still involved, he told us, he said, this is a Carl's 900. Like, this is it's not quite all of the components that Jack would do, but it's all of the production stuff we can do with Jack's cylinders, and it's basically that. So I'm going to let you kind of take credit for how that got developed, but talk about that whole process, because you were building 900s out of the 800 for a long time, and then the 850 came out, and you were still doing 900s.
So we were doing 900s out of both 800 motors, the big block and then the small block. And, we were building big bore kits because that's what people like to ride and stuff, and we would do those. But then when the 850 came out in 2019, Rimshot changed the rules from 800 to 900. They developed a 900 class because Skidoo had an 850 and Polaris had an 850, so they needed to make something to race them in. Mm-hmm. So they came out with a 900 class, and they obviously have the 900 improved stock. So right away, and as soon as the 19s were coming out, we worked on a 900 kit for that 850 motor. And then through the years, we just kept working with porting and changing things on it and making it the way we wanted for basically improved stock racing and Rimshot, and for people like me to play with it in the backcountry and ride. And Marty and the people at Polaris saw that and liked it and knew that that was a good direction to go. That, there's always people that want boost because boost just has so much power, and it does have more power. But there's also people that are maybe older like me or whatever, and they want to have lighter, easier to ride sleds, and that's where the 9R really fits in, is because it's a lot lighter and a lot easier to throw around than a boost. A boost makes more power and goes up the hill better and does that. And if you're 25 and you can throw it around, it doesn't matter. But a lot of people like a lighter, smaller, easier to ride sled, and a lot of us don't really care about going straight up a big hill all the time.
So when you started out in 2019, did you get some of the pre-production sleds to use over the summer to start on development with your 9, or when did you first start? Boring out an 850.
We had them bored and ported before the snow. As sleds got here, and maybe at that time we could get sleds early, but I think we did maybe have a few cylinders early or something. But we definitely had cylinders bored and ported and ready to test with at least a couple different porting designs before we had snow in that year. And then right away we were working on, my sled and Rimshot guys' sleds, because we do the improved stock motors for, Keith and Luke and the Thomases and all those guys. We do their improved stock motors, and we would just try to develop improved stock motors for them right away.
So the Carl's 900 was one of the most popular engine kits that the guys were doing, especially since the 850s. So you got 2019 to 22, and then Polaris comes out with the Patriot Boost. And so now Polaris' lineup has an 850 NA and then an 850 Patriot Boost. And then the next year they come out and they fill that gap with the 9R. What is the process? What were you doing along that way? Because they were coming to you, you were working with them. They were saying, hey, we want to use this 900 kit. How does that all work, like on the back end?
Well, on the back end, basically, they know what we're doing because we're working with them on the race team, and obviously they're helping us with stuff with the race team because they want their race team to win. And they know what we're doing, and then they can obviously cast and make cylinders however they want. They can run what weight we have. They can test it and see how it is on their end for meeting emissions and things like that, and then they can work and try things, and they can make, better heads and better mapping and better pipe and whatever, and they can, they just work on that. And a lot of times, we would talk about stuff back and forth, and, if we tried a different cylinder, we would let them know, hey, this is what we're seeing works good or whatever, and we still do that today.
Were they doing like a production cast prototype cylinder, sending it out to you, letting you check the porting, put it on a sled and ride it, or run it a little bit, or?
Yeah, we would go back and forth with that, for sure.
God, that's interesting. And then you just have you've always had this full catalog of custom parts. Like Caleb, what the environment at Carl's Cycle must be like. You know, I know Jack's probably burning the midnight oil there all the time.
He's a guy who never stops. You know, he generally lives and breathes snowmobiling. I mean, power sports in general, every aspect of it, and making it better, whether it's the clutching, whether it's the motor performance or suspension. You know, his mindset is there's always a way to improve the platform that you're on, and he works every day to see, you know, what aspects that can be changed and improved on.
Like, I've been in your shop, and you took me into your little porting CNC machine shop, and you're the one doing a lot of this, right? Like, you're going in there and you're grinding cylinders.
Yeah, I mean, we have, you know, some guys that work for us and stuff, and we have, you know, guys that do shocks and stuff like that, but I can still do it and still do it. I mean, there's a cylinder in the porting room right now that I'm working on, and Andy Thomas is going to be here tomorrow, and we're going to do his 3 sets of shocks for him tomorrow for his race sleds, because he's picking them up, and we're going to do those tomorrow. And I'll still be working on those, and there's going to be 2 other guys in the shock room doing shocks too for customers or whatever. So it's, I mean, yeah, we have people there that do it too, but I can definitely get my hands dirty and go do it for sure. So
when you come up with ideas, so you were talking about this secondary clutch kit that you've got the torsion spring, you've got a tri-roller. Where do you come up with these ideas? Like, you're just out riding, you're like, oh, this secondary could shift a little better. I'm going to go figure out how to do this.
Well, the torsion spring came out because basically back in the 80s and 90s, snowmobiles had that. They had the torsion spring, and you would wind it up to, you know, number 2 hole or number 3 hole or whatever to make it backshift better, and that was part of the tuning on it. Well, then Team came out, and it just had the 2-roller setup, and it would hold the clutch so it went in and out one way, and you didn't need the torsion spring. And that's the way it was for years. And then we got to thinking, you know, that thing's would backshift better if it had a torsion spring. So we got to looking around, and the snowcross guys were using a lot of that. The problem is the snowcross guys were using stiff springs because for what they're doing and landing off big jumps, they need a stiffer spring. That doesn't work in the powder. But can we do that same idea and do it on an RMK at a softer rate? So we got some springs. We're getting the spring from Speedworks, and they made the torsion spring, and we tested it out, and we really liked the way it worked. And at that time, early last year, we were using it on the 2-roller setup, the same basic helixes and designs we had before, using it with our angles and stuff, and we liked the torsion spring. And then Team actually came out, or I guess it's Venom, sorry, came out with the tri-roller setup. And the reason they have the tri-roller is because as the clutch goes in and out, a 2-roller wants to bind up a little bit, where a tri-roller, it's like sitting on a chair. You can't sit on a 2-legged chair, but you can sit on a 3-legged one. And so it basically is stable, and it goes in and out without binding up. And so we tried that, and we're like, wow, this works a lot better. It backshifts much better, and it stays working good all the time, and it's more responsive, and we like it. And then we put the 2 together, and that was a great combination last year. Like, at the end of the season, that's what we had on our sleds, and we loved it. And then this year we just are producing more of them. We've got a lightweight aluminum version, or we have the steel version, and we have a lightweight helix made. And basically we're selling kits for the 9R, and we're selling them for the boost, and we have 850 and 650 stuff.
So is this helix, this is a Carl Cycle helix? Like, you're coming up with the ramp angles and everything on your own?
Yeah, we choose what ramp angles we have. We have obviously different ramp angles for different motors. Like the Boost has a different one than the 9R. Obviously, those are our 2 biggest selling kits right now, is the 9R and the Boost, because that's what the performance guys ride.
Yeah.
And we have an angle that we think is good for that we think works better and like, and so we have those made for us, and they're, you know, we had them made lightweight, and we've been trying to sell them.
So if a guy walks into your dealership, like this fall, it's November 24, and says, okay, hey, Jack, I want a Patriot Boost 155, 325 track, but I want you to just dial it in. What all are you doing to that sled?
We can do whatever the guy wants, but our common stuff we have, which we have, 4 or 5 employees that ride 900 Boost sleds. Mm-hmm. So to start with, on an 850 Boost, a lot of guys are doing the 900 Boost. The biggest reason is because the 900 has more bottom end, and the Boost lacks bottom end. And so guys want to have more bottom end, more so than they want to have more top speed, per se. So we could do a 900 top end on it and do our porting with the 900 boost, which our porting adds a little bit of bottom end. We're using the TRS valve on the boost this year, which works really well and has more response on the bottom.
So talk about what that does, though, like that.
Basically, it just seals off the airbox better when it seals, but it also opens easier. So like when you grab a handful of throttle and there's no boost, that spring is weaker and it opens easier, so you get a bigger gulp of air. And then it seals off quicker and better, so it stays sealed. So it holds pressure and builds pressure sooner. And it's not going to add any more top end, because on top end, the ECU is going to read the boost and limit it anyways. The wastegate's going to be working and you're going to be running the boost that the ECU tells it to. But on bottom end, it definitely builds boost quicker and it has more responsive, and it's better on the bottom end. And riding in and out of the trees, it feels more like a natural motor than a boost motor. Like, it helps it quite a bit. And then like with our clutching, our weights are designed for the turbo with some weight below the center line, and they build more RPM down low and make it more responsive. And then we have our helix and our helix angle that we like for the boost. We have the torsion spring that we like, and we have the tri-roller that doesn't bind up and backshifts better. So each one of those things is just designed to make a boost sled have more low end, build RPM quicker, backshift better, and just be more responsive to ride. And so we do that, and then along with it, we do shocks. And, like I say, we've been doing that since the 80s, and we do pretty much all the shocks for the rim shot guys and stuff. And so if the guy wants it set up for someone like me to ride in the backcountry, we can set it up like that. If the guy's 400 pounds, we can valve and set the shocks up for that. If it's a 100-pound lady riding it, we can set the shocks up for her and do a setup for him.
So talk about when you talk about revalving and setting up shocks for rider weight on a mountain sled. That's something people don't understand as well. Like in the dirt bike world, people understand like, oh yeah, the way my weight might be in 20 pounds heavier than the next guy, I should revalve for that.
It's a dramatic difference.
That market understands that very well. But the snowmobile market is just like, it's got shocks on it. I don't care. We're going in deep snow. It doesn't matter. Yeah. What does revalving and setting that up do?
So, basically the valving does all the control on the sled, so you can make it do whatever you want. You can make it go down the trail and have less body roll and go around the corner flatter, or you can make it so that the back end doesn't squat as much and it goes up a hill better because it doesn't wheelie or trench as much. You can make it so it you go down through 4-foot whoops, because the trail leaving the parking lot has 5 miles of 4-foot whoops, and you can valve it so that you can drive that at 40 miles an hour or 50 miles an hour if you want. And depends on what the guy is doing and how they're riding. Someone like me will have a different setup than someone like Andy Thomas that's coming tomorrow, because we did his backcountry sled, and even though we're similar size, his stuff is a fair amount stiffer than mine because he hits stuff harder and rides faster and hits the bumps harder. If I see a bump, I'm old enough, I want to slow down for it now. I don't want to hit it as hard. And so we'll have a stiffer valving for someone like that. Or like Eric that works for us, his valving's a little stiffer than mine. But then we have, other people like Larry that used to work for us. His stuff is softer than mine. So we kind of know what, we talk to the guy and try to find out what they want and how they're riding. And then we set it up for them how they want. So are you able to get a Patriot Boost bottom end response and all that to feel like a naturally aspirated 9R? Just that quick immediate response, or is it still? I don't think you're getting there to a regular 9R, because all these things we do to the boost we could do to the 9R too and make it more responsive on the bottom. It's hard to have a plugged up intake and a plugged up exhaust and have it be as good on the bottom. That's just the facts of nature. But then once that thing starts spinning, obviously it makes more boost on top and you have more power than you could ever get out of a naturally aspirated motor. So you're never going to get as good, but I think stock versus a stock 9, you get a lot closer for sure. You gain a lot of bottom end response and just the way it feels in the trees, and it makes it feel lighter because it's so responsive that the front end lifts quick and easy, and it doesn't have that bog and hesitate. And so I think you can get there. You're never going to be, it's just and because of physics, you're never going to be as good.
Yeah. So a lot of guys will get a new sled or buy a used sled or whatever, and the first money they spend is, they'll spend $500-600 on a wrap, and then a lightweight can, and bags and tunnel bags.
And the wrap just added 4 pounds.
Right. Made sled heavier. What's the correct method? Like, where should you start out spending your money just to make that sled do its job better?
Well, you got to do what makes you happy. I mean, some guys care more about what it looks like than how it goes.
Right.
So it's up to the individual customer because they want to do what makes them happy and what feels good. And yeah, if they want a sled that looks really cool, then that's what they want to do for sure. I tend to go the other way where I just leave my sleds look bone stock, and I work on the motor and the shocks and make it so, I have the 34-inch A-arms and stuff on it, and I want it to be easy to ride. And I'm trying to make my snowmobile easier to ride, faster and more responsive, and backshift better and work better, stuff like that.
So you've got a unique view on this industry because you have the racing experience on the pro level. You've got the dealership experience for years, decades. You've got the involvement with the factory, so you've been on the backside of engineering, and you're inside of those meetings where they're doing like long-term projections and long-term planning. What does this industry need to happen in the next 5 to 10 years to maintain or improve?
I think they just need to keep heading the direction Polaris was, 3 and 4 years ago, where can we make it lighter? Can we make it handle better? Can we make it side hill better? Can we make it pop up on the snow quicker? Can we make it easier to ride in the backcountry? What are people doing with snowmobiles now than what they were doing back in the day? In the 90s, we were riding trails everywhere. We were riding logging roads. And now we ride through the trees on the side of hills, and we ride places that we couldn't ride before. And I think people are they're evolving into riding snowmobiles where people didn't used to ride before. They're riding steep hills and trees and things that they can go through now that they couldn't ride before. I'm sure in Island Park, in the old days, you guys used to ride trails up to Yellowstone, and you used to ride up by Sawtell and ride trails more.
Yeah.
And now you're riding more and more trees, maybe closer to the cabin because there's trees and steep hills that are close to the cabin that you couldn't ride before.
Yeah,
certain
absolutely.
drainages and draws that you always pass by because, don't go down there, you'll be stuck for days. And now it's like, we go in and out of that all the time.
Yeah, we do most of our riding closer to the cabin now because
Exactly.
we used to just make that way all the way back up into Jefferson, get into the big mountains and the big bowls. So you had more open terrain to go explore, and now, like exactly what you're saying, like we're covering all the stuff that we used to just bypass.
Yeah, because that was dangerous. You couldn't go down there because you'll never get out.
Yeah.
Now, that's where you like to ride because, we can go climb that big hill any day. The old days you used to go to like a big mountain like Jefferson, and you'd say, okay, let's spend all day trying to climb it, and then we'll come back the next day and see if we can get over. And now you show up the first day in the deepest snow day and you go over it.
Yeah.
And so that's not the challenge anymore. The challenge is to have fun in the tight trees and draws and places like that.
And just see how far you can go. I remember a snow shoot in McCall. I think Steve and Lane were staying at your cabin, and we had another place rented up there. And we took off on a day, and I was trying to hang with you and Marty, and you guys never stopped. Like I've been with groups, where you take off and you just go and you're riding, but when you and Marty get together, you two are it's a race. And I just remember, man, I've never seen anybody go this fast just on a ride. But you guys were just pinned to the bar. And I couldn't really hang with you, but I was close enough to stay in your snow dust. But we rode for 25 minutes without stopping. And it took half an hour for the group to catch up for Rodeo. But that opened my eyes to okay, this is where this sport is going. Like, if I want to get better, you go ride with guys like you, and you really elevate your riding style like that. What do you remember over the years? I don't know who you're riding with, Jack or some of your guys from the shop, like some memorable moments on the mountain.
I've just ridden a lot my whole life, and we've had a lot of good employees that ride a lot, and we've had employees that retired that still ride, and we like to ride and have fun for sure. I ride dirt bikes and jet skis and snowmobiles, and we ride what we sell. We ride road bikes, and I like to ride. I like to ride dual sports. I go on 5-day dual sport trip or whatever. And yeah, we have a lot of employees that do that, and good customers that go ride and stuff. And I still like to go ride with people. There's guys now that I ride with that are too good for me that I kind of hold them up. So there's
Can't imagine many of those guys.
there's a few out there for sure now.
Do you still keep in touch with Kirk Hibbert and Tony Heikkinen? Any of these guys used to race?
Yeah, so Kirk's really good. I mean, obviously we're racing against each other, and but we were always good friends and liked each other or whatever. And it just so happens that this last year he decided he wanted to buy an 890, and his Teresa, his wife's mom, lives here in Boise, and so they planned a trip to come out here, and her husband's having some health issues, and so he was going to come out and see him, and he made arrangements to buy a dual sport from us and get set up with that. And so he likes to do that stuff now. He rides a Goldwing a lot and rides dual sports a lot, and he wanted to get that, and he came out and saw us and got a bike, and he's doing that. And so I've talked to Kirk a few times this year, and I was going to maybe see him when I went back to the 70th, but it didn't work out. But yeah, Kirk's a good guy. I like Kirk. He's fun.
Who was your biggest rival back then in the racing days?
It would have been Hibbert. I mean, he was definitely, Hibbert, my brother-in-law Toby Ashley, they were definitely some of the toughest ones. And then when Tony Heikkinen came along, he was tough for sure. But for years in the Rocky Mountain circuit, Kirk was your guy. Like if you could beat Kirk, you had a good day. There's a good chance you won if you beat Kirk. And he was always a good guy. Him and Rex were always fair and good, and they were fun to race with, and they were a challenge for sure. He was good.
Yeah. Some fun stories back then. I remember back, I was telling Caleb, and I may have told you this before, I came up to your trailer at the Snow West Snowcross in 93 or 94, I think. We'd been flagging the race the whole weekend and watching you, and I brought one of our Snow West T-shirts over to you, caught you at the trailer and asked you to sign it. I still have that thing in a box somewhere. I need to pull it out and hang it up in the podcast studio, but still got that T-shirt signed with Jack Struthers number 8 there. But yeah, you had that checker flag helmet paint style back then. It was similar to Ty Davis was running one in the dirt world back then. But
yeah, or that was painted by a
cool
guy.
Look.
Well, I guess there's a few different ones I had, but Don Czar painted a lot of helmets for me, and Don Czar still is a customer of ours and buys dual dirt bikes.
Oh, really?
And stuff. Yeah.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, I miss those days where you kind of had the one-off helmet look and the custom painted stuff. Now everybody's got so many wraps, and like you were saying, the stock snowmobiles stand out more than the wrap snowmobiles anymore.
Yeah, there's some truth to that.
they look a little cleaner. But all right, you got anything else you want to add in?
Oh,
here?
just another new product we have this year is we have grips we came out with. These grips are the same diameter as stock, so the heat comes through them the same, and they're just a softer grip with more traction, more grip, so it's easier to ride because you don't have to hang on as tight. And yeah, so we had these made. I got these because when I went back to the 70th, we were restoring my 91 sled, and these are the grips it had on it, but they were thicker, so that's why we quit using them. And so we had this company make us new grips that are the same thickness as stock, so you get the same heat through them, and they're grippier.
Yeah. So that's the same brand that was on your 91 race sled.
Yep, same brand that was on my 91 race sled, and they're just smaller but similar rubber compound and same pattern and same grip. And I used to like them because they were race with them because they were grippy and you could hang on, and that's why I liked them. The problem was they were just bigger diameter, and so your hands don't get as warm. And we had these made so that they're thin and your hands get just as warm and you can grip better. And some people like smaller grips, and so that's a good feature for them.
How hard is it to change grips on an RMK where you got the hand warmer or the hand warmers on the bars?
Basically, it's super simple. You take the hook off and you take your air hose and blow the grip off, and you can blow those on. And then if you want to glue these on, you can glue them on, or you can just blow them on like the stock ones are just blown on. And so you can just use air pressure and blow them on and blow them off.
So you don't need to glue them on?
You don't need it. The hot grip part stays with the bar, and this just goes on over the hot grip.
It's a pretty easy change. And you can just cut the end off and run your hook?
Yeah, if you want to run the hooks, you just cut the end off and you put your hook in it. If you're going to run it without hooks, I'd recommend gluing the grip on so that it's stuck on better.
Yeah, because you tend to pull on the side.
Yeah, you tend to pull on you pull on the end of it without a hook, so you need a little bit more traction there. But with the hook on it, you can just blow them on and put the hook on and go.
All right. Well, we won't keep you too much longer. I know you got a booth to go over there and work, and people to talk to. But thanks for coming on
Yeah.
the show. Jack Struthers.
Thanks for having us.
Carl Cycle Sales, Caleb Frankamp.
Thank you.
Good to have you on here, and thanks for coming on the show. If you want to catch another episode, go to the YouTube channel for Snow West Magazine. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, like the videos, and watch out for more episodes. We've got several episodes coming this season. And go to snowwest.com. We still do the magazine. You can sign up there, get your subscription, check out Snow West Magazine merch and everything. But thanks for listening. Catch you guys later.